Welcome everyone to our Zoom program today. My name is Laura Fleek. I'm the adult programming librarian for the Woodward Park Library. I am very happy to welcome Sharon Matson today to talk about hummingbirds, a little different pace. Just a quick housekeeping for those of you who attended our program last week on successful houseplants. As you know, our host, Robbie Cranch, encountered some technical difficulties and we weren't able to finish the program. It has been rescheduled to August 21st on a Zoom, and I am putting that link into our chat box. So that should show up there for anyone who's still interested. And we're going to get started with Sharon here in just a moment. Please feel free to post your questions either in the Q&A or the chat box, and she'll address those at the end. So let's get going, Sharon. Whoops, Sharon, you
unmute.
There
Okay.
we go.
Am I good?
You're good.
Okay, thank you. Glad to be here. I have been a master gardener since 1999. I don't profess to be an expert on hummingbirds. I've just had feeders in my yard for 50 years and seem to have success at attracting them and really enjoy them. So I'm hoping that some of the things that I say can help you attract hummingbirds to your yard if that is what you desire. In the process of putting this together, I asked myself, why would you want hummingbirds in your yard? Well, they're very entertaining to watch. It helps to feed them, particularly in our hot climate where they need the moisture and water. They're beautiful. They are important pollinators, particularly for some flowers that are tubular. They're the only thing that can get in there and pollinate, and they're fascinating to watch. And I can't think of any reason why you wouldn't want hummingbirds in your garden. Here are several names. I won't read them, but you can see different words that are used to describe hummingbirds. And the pictures that I have in some of these slides are not local hummingbirds, but hummingbirds from around the world. There's more than 600 species, and some of them are very fascinating. This one is the only bird that has a beak longer than its body. I said 600 species, over 300 species, 360 species, depending on your source. They are only in North, Central, and South America, only the Western Hemisphere. There are 16 varieties in the United States, 7 in California, and there are many more near the equator, 163. And you can see then Central America has 55, and Costa Rica by itself has 60. There are 2 that actually migrate all the way to Alaska, the Anna's and Rufus. And the ruby-throated hummingbird is the only one that's east of the Mississippi. They are everywhere in our valley. This is a hummingbird that just happened to be next to a bald eagle nest near Millerton Lake as we were taking pictures of bald eagle chicks. Fun facts about hummingbirds. They consume more food per body weight than any other vertebrae. So half their body weight a day, and they have to eat 5 to 10 times an hour. They have the largest heart relative to their body weight of any bird, and their heart beats 500 to 1,000 times a minute. They have the smallest egg of any bird. They can go into a torpor state, which I'll elaborate on. They also eat insects on the wing, or they'll perch on a branch and eat them off of a plant. They can live up to 12 years, but the average is 3 to 5 years. And they'll actually make a trap, they call it a trap line, where they have a route where they know the flowers that they want to drink the nectar from, and they'll go through that pattern. Their tongue is as long as their bill, and it's forked at the end, and they actually lick the nectar. They pull their tongue in with the nectar on it, and that's how they get it into their body. Here's a couple hummingbirds battling over a feeder. Some of these pictures were taken by local photographers, including this man, Martin Green, so I've given him credit. Torpor state is where it's kind of like a bear in hibernation. Their metabolism is 1/50th to 1/60th of normal, and it's the last resort they have before they freeze or they starve. They have tendons on their little feet that lock in so that they don't fall from whatever they're hanging on to. And they can do it from 8 to 14 hours, and it takes 20 to 60 minutes to recover from it. Their body temperature drops from 104 to 64. And this picture was taken by a friend of a friend who just happened to see this hummingbird in a bush, looks like an orange tree, and was in a state of torpor. Their feathers are very unusual. The colors are different for the male and female. The females tend to be more bland because they want to be camouflaged and blend in, while the males have plumage that's bright and colorful, which helps them in the courtship. Their iridescent feathers are around their neck and their throat. It's called a gorget, and it reflects the color depending on how the sun is shining on it. So if it's not shining on it, it can look black. But then as the sun shines on it, then it has the colors. The hummingbird's flying abilities are amazing. They can hover, they can fly forward, they can fly backwards, they can fly upside down. Their wings rotate in a figure 8, rotating from their shoulder, which allows them to do those flights. They fly more like an insect than other birds. They can do a somersault. Their wings beat anywhere from 18 to 78 times a second. They can go 25 to 30 miles an hour, and they can lift off in a snap and actually land in a snap. And their flight muscles are 25% of their weight. Hummingbirds come in different sizes. The smallest is in Cuba, called the bee hummingbird, and it's only 2 inches long and 0.07 ounces. The largest is a giant hummingbird of the Andes, which is 9 inches long and anywhere from 0.6 to 0.8 of an ounce. But most of them are 3 to 5 inches and weigh about a nickel. This was a hummingbird that flew into our window, and my husband picked it up, and I thought it gave a good scale. It's called an Anna's hummingbird. This is my husband's hand, which is a normal male hand, and you can see really how tiny it is. And it almost feels weightless in your hand. The female builds the nest from materials available: grass, plant fibers, animal hair, moss, spider webs, etc. On the outside, they might have lichen and twigs for camouflage. It fits the female as she lays the eggs and incubates them, and then it stretches as the baby birds grow. It's kind of like a good pair of sweatpants, I've heard said. They lay 2 eggs like jelly beans, and they feed the babies a mixture of nectar and insects. The incubation period's from 15 to 18 days, and they fledge in about 3 weeks. Here is Anna's hummingbird feeding a young, and the photograph is by a local photographer, Brandon Smart. A lot of people have had the pleasure of having hummingbirds build nests in their garden somewhere. This is a friend whose hummingbird built it right on top of her wind chimes on her back porch. Now, the varieties that we have in Fresno County, this is from the Fresno Audubon Society, who does a bird count. And they, the annas, you can see the spring, summer, fall, and winter. It's common throughout the year, so it doesn't even migrate. The black chin is fairly common in the spring and summer and uncommon in the fall. And then the Rufus, Costa, and Calliope are uncommon, but sometimes seen. And then the broad-tailed only been seen once, and Allen's seen 4 times. So if you have hummingbirds in your yard, it's most likely Anna's, black-chinned, and possibly a Rufus. The Anna's hummingbird is in Fresno year-round. It breeds from December to June. It has this green body and the scarlet gorget. And interesting fact, it will shake its body 55 times a second to shed off rain or dirt. And hummingbirds have been able to expand their territory because people are planting non-native plants which bloom, for instance, year-round for the annas. So they have the source of nectar. This is a black-chinned. It's the second most common in the Fresno area. You can see the black gorget with the purple edge along the bottom, a green body, and then a white spot behind its eye. The female has just a green body. The black chin, this is a better picture of that purple stripe on the bottom of the black chin. And this is a little female Rufus hummingbird, which you can see doesn't have a lot of color, but the Rufus color is evident there, that rusty color. They're the 3rd most common in Fresno County, and it can migrate 3,000 miles up to Alaska and down to Mexico. And here's the more colorful male. And one of the least common is the Allens, although this was a picture taken in the valley. Now, the question is, how do I attract hummingbirds to my garden? You can put out multiple feeders. If they're large, they'll feed more birds. If you position the feeders apart from each other, it helps because they can tend to be territorial. And if the feeders are too close, then the birds will fight over them. And if they're further apart, then they tend to choose one that they like, and there's not quite as much fighting. You want to keep insects away from the feeders, and there are feeders that have kind of guards that will help with that. You absolutely want to keep your feeders clean. And if you want to plant hummingbird-friendly flowers, minimize insecticides, because think about the fact that they're out there eating insects in your garden as well. I heard suggested you can add red highlights to your garden with red chair or red ball or red ribbons. You can have water features for hummingbirds, and also vegetation provides shelter and purchase for them. There are many feeders that you can choose from in the stores. The most important thing is that if you put up a feeder, you need to make a commitment to keep them clean and filled, because if you don't and they become rely on them, then you're doing the birds a disservice. I like a feeder that has red components and is plastic, because you can think about the fact, or glass. Some are metal, and I just think that it would be too hot for the birds in the summertime to be around the metal perches. It helps if they have a perch on them, a place for them to sit, although they don't necessarily have to have that. You can have a dish variety like what's on the top left, or the bottle. A friend said that their hummingbirds prefer the dish. I have both, and I find that they use both of them. You need to clean them regularly. It's best not to have them in full sun all day, but mine are in full sun in the afternoon, and I just make sure that I clean them and refill them regularly. And then you can clean them with vinegar and water. This is the suggestion from the Audubon Society here in town. You don't need to use red dye. Particularly, it helps to have that red on the feeders, but the dye is unnecessary and not healthy for the birds. You don't need to use store-bought nectar, and in fact, I've read that they discourage you from the store-bought nectar because it has other ingredients in it that might not necessarily be good for the birds. But the formula is 4 cups of boiling water and 1 cup of granulated sugar. You don't have to use any, in fact, better not to use any other kinds of sugar. You don't have to use organic sugar, just 1 cup of granulated sugar and 4 cups of water. Now I have a hot water dispenser at my sink, and that's adequate because it just helps the sugar dissolve before I put the feeder out. You can store it up to 2 weeks in your refrigerator if you make a bigger batch. That way you don't have to be making it as often. And you want to clean it according to outdoor temperatures. So you can see the Audubon Society here in the bottom right in the blue have suggested that if it's 70 to 84 degrees, that you clean the feeders every 3 days, and 2 days for 85 to 87, and every day for 88 and up. If there is any cloudiness to the liquid, or you see any black residue in the feeder, then you definitely need to clean it right away. Here are a couple of things that can help keep insects out of the feeder. On the left is an ant guard. So you would hang the top of it on your hook and your feeder below, and then you fill it with water, and the ants can't get past the water to get to your feeder. And then some of the feeders, you can attach these bee guards so that the bees can't get to the feeders. Here's one of my feeders in July of 2020. These are all Annas, except the one flying is the black chin. And you can see that they can peacefully coexist sometimes. There are times when people have other things on their feeders other than hummingbirds. This was from the internet. I have no idea where it's from. Here's the hummer bear. And praying mantis actually can kill hummingbirds. That's what's happening here. And so if you see a praying mantis on your feeder, you definitely want to get it off. This is a male hooded Oreo. This is locally. I had one on my feeder one time. They're beautiful birds. Woodpecker. Now, providing a water feature, it's not necessary, but they do enjoy it. You can use fountains, shallow bird baths, misters. You want to keep them free of debris and mold, clean them regularly, make sure the cats aren't around, keep poisons away, and you can't have it very deep because they will drown. So you only want it an inch or two deep. I have a bird bath, and I've got rocks in the bottom of it so that it's not as deep as it could be. Keep it full of water, and it helps to have it in a visible area. Here's a female anise on a fountain, and this is a local photographer. I'm sorry, there. You can see up on the top right, there's a hummingbird perch. This is my neighbor's tree, and they like to find places where they have a good view. And here's one closer. And this is a perch that I've provided next to my feeders, and they do like to land on them. You can also enhance hummingbirds in your yard by planting plants with flowers. Criteria for selecting these plants are you want to have them at different heights and shapes. The showiness of the bloom is important, but not necessary. You, of course, want it easy to maintain and plant. There's different color choices for particular species of plants. So they tend to like bright colors like reds and oranges and purples, but I have seen them in my garden on lighter colored flowers. So it's not necessarily the only criteria. The blooming times are important because you want some to be blooming hopefully all year round to help the birds get the nectar. So if you can observe when they are blooming, then you can plant different plants so that you have that year-round blooming. Plant throughout your garden. I know some people have hummingbird gardens where they just have planted hummingbird-friendly plants, but here again, hummingbirds tend to be territorial. So if you can spread the flowers throughout your garden, then more birds will be able to partake of your nectar. They have no sense of smell, so fragrance is not important, but bright colors are. And of course, we always would encourage you to plant California native plants. I am going to show you pictures of some plants that hummingbirds like, and some that are in my garden that they like. So here's bee balm. I don't know why I skip sometimes. Butterfly bush. And here is a little guy in my garden on a butterfly bush. California fuchsia. I had one on a camellia plant. This is not a native, but it's called Newell's red cestrum. And they do like those tubular flowers. And here's a hummingbird with my cell phone while I was gardening. I noticed it and took a quick picture. Daphne. Here again, here's a bird in my garden. So some of these plants are not on a list that you might look at that are hummingbird friendly, but since they were on the flowers in my garden, I've included them. This is called Digiplexus. And this was a low light picture with my cell phone, but you can see in my backyard that they're on the Digiplexus. And Anisana salvia, there are many species of salvia, and they are attracted to many of them. The reds and the purples, particularly. Hummingbird sage, from its name, you can gather that it's popular. A friendship sage. Pineapple sage, which also has an edible flower that tastes a little bit like pineapple. Purple sage. Mexican bush sage by a local photographer again, on a manzanita plant. I don't think that's very often listed. Daylily, lupin, monkey flower. I think I mentioned earlier that they tend to like tubular flowers because they don't have as much competition from insects, that frequently the insects don't go into the tubular tubes, and so they can partake more easily. Here's a fennel, and I was just observing a hummingbird on my fennel yesterday. Milkweed, they like the different varieties of milkweed that we have in the valley. Watsonia, you can see the tubular flowers here again. Alstroemeria. And you can see on this hummingbird, you can see right on the middle of his beak, the pollen. And that's why they're pollinators. They pick up pollen from one flower and then they'll go to another, and some of that pollen will rub off. Trumpet vine, Cape fuchsia, Crocosmia. This is in my garden, and there's Anna's on it. And even roses. I have red roses on my back fence, and they are frequently feeding there. Oh, there they are. Plant hostas, hibiscus, blue curls, verbena, local photographer, clivia, eucalyptus, lilac. Penstemon is a California native, and there's a lot of varieties of this. They like those red and blue ones. There's another one. Even zinnias. Honeysuckle, foxglove, snapdragons, scabiosa, larkspur, which is a delphinium, columbine. So please do not use insecticides. The hummingbirds eat the insects. And there are several sources of plants that attract hummingbirds. I know my list was not exhaustive, and I went through it quickly, but you can see that the master gardeners of Tulare County have a list of plants that attract hummingbirds. UC Davis Arboretum, some of the nurseries to include Las Bolitas and Anna's Annuals. The Old Farmer's Almanac has a list, and the California Native Hummingbird Plants from the California Native Plant Society. And that's the end.
Well, thank you, sir. Actually, this has been a really informative and beautiful presentation. I don't know how, I really appreciated all the photos that you got of the local. I don't know how they took those pictures with those wings moving so fast, but they're beautiful.
Right.
There are a couple questions, and I encourage anyone out there to submit any. I was curious, why does a hummingbird go into the torpor state that you were discussing?
Well, if the weather is very cold, if the weather's freezing and their metabolism is already very high, and if they just can't stay warm, then they go into that torpor. Or if they're having difficulties feeding, and say that it's close to evening and flowers have closed up, or they're not finding nectar, they may go into that torpor state.
And also, I have to say, I did not realize that hummingbirds migrated. It makes sense if you think about it with the flowers, but to such a small bird migrating 3,000 miles, that's just flabbergasting.
It is. And most birds migrate as a flock, and hummingbirds migrate singularly, which makes it even more amazing.
I was also curious, as people have encroached on the territory, of a lot of birds, they become endangered. Is that true of hummingbirds, or have they done okay?
I think they've done okay because people plant flowers in their gardens that have the nectar that they're able to, feed on. Mm-hmm. So if you have wildflowers replaced by garden flowers, then you're okay.
Fear. And let's see, I was trying to, does anyone else have any questions or comments, or maybe some any other kind of quick do's and don'ts, especially for the new beginner?
Well, the two biggest things that I would recommend is don't use insecticides, because they can harm the hummingbirds if they try to eat insects that have been exposed to that. And if you do make the commitment to put out feeders, that you would make the commitment to keep them filled and clean.
Okay. And all those, I thought it was interesting that they do not have a sense of smell. They're attracted by color. Mm-hmm. I found that really fascinating. Mm-hmm. Well, we went through a lot of information today, but no worries, everyone. We have recorded this program just like we do all of them. Give us a week or so, and it will be posted on the Fresno County Library website, as well as the Master Gardeners. And I also would like to invite Roz to tell us about some of our upcoming programs as well.
And Sharon, I just want to thank you for a wonderful presentation on hummingbirds. Seeing it a second time, I've learned even that much more than I learned the first time. And I did go out after your first presentation with the Sunnyside Garden Club. I went out and got a hummingbird feeder and was delighted to see all the hummingbirds that are coming to my backyard. And Great. This morning, while I was out watering, I noticed a hummingbird in my aloe flower.
There you go.
So some of those are really deep also, and their beaks can go right into that. So really incredible, and really want to thank you for doing this for Fresno. And right now, what I'd like to do, Sharon, is share the screen so I can talk about some of the upcoming classes that we have, both at the library and at the Garden of the Sun. So thank you very, very much. So for everyone else that's still visiting, just a couple of things that I want to share with you about growing with the Master Gardeners. We do have a few more classes that are coming up. And like I said, I want to share those with you. Now, as Laura mentioned earlier, We did reschedule the Zoom class that Robbie Cranch will be doing. It'll be August 21st at 10 o'clock. And Laura, will there be a link on that fresnolibrary.libcal.com website for people to sign up for that?
Yes, it is already up and people should be able to log into that.
And you really don't want to miss that. Robbie has, I mean, she talks about a lot of things, house plants, poisonous plants, and she's actually doing a wreath class at the Garden of the Sun in December. But these ones that are in red are going to be our in-person classes at Woodward Park Library. So coming up on August 7th, Gwen Olshavy will be doing cool weather veggies, and she'll show you how you can plant for a winter or fall winter garden. Annie Dahl on September 25th at 10 a.m. will be doing a composting class, and she'll actually have a few samples there, I think, to show you some things, as well as a PowerPoint. And then I'll be doing a succulent pumpkin demonstration on Sunday, October 10th. And if you notice, the time is different. It's 2 o'clock after church for most people. And what we'll also have for you there is a handout of the material so that you'll be able to go and see how to make a succulent pumpkin and what you need to have. And also want to let you know that there's a video that I did last October that's on the Master Gardener website. So if you happen to miss that class, you'll also be able to see it there. And then we're also going to be posting some classes that are going to be held at the Garden of the Sun. And again, the red ones are the classes that are at Woodward Park, but John Kincaid will be doing irrigation. There'll be spring bulbs, olive curing, topiaries, propagation, wreaths and swags, and tool maintenance. And all of these will be from September through December. And again, the ones in red are at Woodward Park Library. The others will be at the Garden of the Sun. And that's located on Winery right near the Discovery Center. And finally, just a few websites. The top website is the Fresno County Master Gardener website that tells you about a lot of the classes and information about becoming a Master Gardener. The second one is the helpline, and you can email any questions that you have about gardening to them. And if you include photos, that's even better. And then the third one allows you to get announcements of upcoming events and gardening education. And oftentimes there'll be an opportunity for you to tell us how we're doing. There'll be a survey. And if you are interested, you can respond to the survey. So I just want to thank everyone for attending all of our Growing with the Master Gardener series, and invite you to continue to check out the classes that we're offering this fall. And, you know, even if you want to send some of your comments to the helpline and let us know if there are other classes that you're interested in seeing, we'll see if we can get those up and running for you. So Laura, again, thank you for hosting Growing with the Master Gardeners. It's been a very successful program, and just want to thank everybody for coming and offer them to stay cool.
Yes, and thank you, Roz, for coordinating this with so many Master Gardeners. Sharon did have one question for you, which it says, is there anything I can do to get them to nest in my yard? They stay around all day, but I don't see any nests.
I have never had a nest in my yard, and I don't have any recommendation. I don't know.
They're obviously fussy homeowners then.
Yeah,
I have to say, this has been a really beautiful, elegant presentation today. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you everyone for coming to all our Zoom classes. We're hoping, and I'm also excited to have them in person at the Woodward branch, but we'd also look forward to doing some more Zoom presentations as well to the community. Thank you, Roz. Thank you, Sharon, and everyone for coming today. This has been very enjoyable and educational. So everyone, as Roz says, stay cool and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Bye now.